Into the fire, here we go. Into the fire, head to toe. Into the fire to be seen. Into the fire to be.
This is Mark A. Lewis, is the Sacred Village podcast, here with interview number 1 with video. I'm still staring at the green light instead of people. I know that somebody eventually will be listening and watching this video, this podcast. I guess the medium of the podcast, it was born as a auditory experience, branched out of the radio phenomenon as opposed to the television phenomenon. But through YouTube and through the internet and the bandwidth we're able to access on our telephones, through the internet, through Wi-Fi, but also data through our telephones. It's quite phenomenal. In fact, I'd say it's astonishing and a little bit scary all at the same time, that you can watch a high resolution 4K, 8K streaming movie on your big screen television through bandwidth, through data. How's that even? That's obviously not my wheelhouse, but the whole thing seems like a stretch in a certain way, but it's also, maybe it's just stretching the capacities of understanding what's possible and just feeling a little uncomfortable as we shift, as we expand our ability to process what the universe is capable of. And also, I suppose, becoming comfortable with a more significant download, with a wider bandwidth. And now this is actually playing into the, unbeknownst to me, this is playing into our theme today, topic that I'm wanting to explore, which is connecting to last week's podcast, the solo cast that I did, the introduction, the proper introduction to the vision that I had about the Spirit of Christ coming through visions, coming through ayahuasca visions. I get into that in detail in the last episode, and I've shared these experiences with my friend Lucas Burton, who's here with me. So Lucas, or Luke, is a therapist in Kelowna, British Columbia, and we've been doing ceremony together for quite a while. And we met in a men's circle in Salmon Arm. This is all in North Okanagan, British Columbia, and we've become good friends, and we're on a similar path, navigating what it means, striving to be a better person in the world and incorporating spiritual experiences and spiritual direction into this path, which have come in a way, like for me, certainly with zero expectation of the appearance of the Spirit of Christ and other spirits, they're symbols for me as a human being to look to as guides, as gurus, but they're more than that too, because they are spirits in the world. They're energetic structures. They're phenomenon of consciousness that is both separate and connected to me and to the rest of the world. So I'm going to bring Luke in here before I go too far down that rabbit hole. I might need a friend to go down that dark tavern that rabbit is leading us into, continues to lead us into, and in that it's not Wizard of Oz. What's the Mad Hatter, the not Dorothy, but I'm getting the two confused because I've seen the Wizard of Oz recently. It's on the tip of my tongue. What's the book that I'm thinking of? Are you with me here, Luke? With
I'm not
down
much
the
of a
proverbial
Wizard of
rabbit
Oz
hole,
person.
following the rabbit. Yeah, that I throw you off also. There's going to be people that are listening to this that are just like shaking their heads like, you idiots.
Just get it.
Why is that escaping me? Okay, now the rabbit hole is like, it really is dark. It'll come to us. It'll come to one of us. Yeah. But welcome, Luke. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Took
So here
some
we
time
are, a
getting
couple
here.
of humble human men. What's that?
I said it took time to get here, right? You're always trying to figure it out, how to make it work, and it just tends to work out how it's supposed to work out. Kind of amazing how that happens.
Yeah, getting out of the way.
Not the easiest thing to do sometimes.
Alice in Wonderland.
There you go.
That's the book. That's the character and the reference. But yeah, it does feel that way. It's like ceremony. How do we incorporate a spirit such as Christ, into our life, and how is it different from the old way of doing it? Why don't you give us a little introduction of yourself, if you don't mind, before we delve any further into this topic?
It's always an interesting question. Tell us about yourself. So I'll do my best to, I guess, grew up in northeastern Ontario. I had a large family of 6 of us, 6 kids, mom and dad. And then with a background in what some people would call today, like Christianity, but also with some challenges with my parents and following other walks that they were doing at the time. So there was always some sort of confusion as a kid growing up about a connection to spirit or connection to God. I very much grew up in that environment between Roman Catholic and then Pentecostal, as some people will call it, and had lots of interesting life experiences now, as I can see it, that really changed a lot about me. It's easy to say that now as a 53-year-old man, but at the time created a lot of pain and a lot of anxiety and misgivings, probably more or less towards God, towards the understanding of Christ and forgiveness and life supposed to be good. So that sort of took me off my path at one point, but maybe really just took a different turn. And then it came in my life, and I was going to decided to be a pastor, and that got turned into becoming a counselor, which turned into an 8-year journey of going to school and working in different avenues as I was going to school. I worked in a prison for a bit and worked with a lot of youth and challenged youth, and then really sort of found my footing in the path of working with people with struggling with addictions and different levels of pain bodies as we would further come to see them. And then took that path all the way from Ontario back out to BC and continued that journey in the life of working with people struggling with substance use. And that moved into more mental health aspects, and then really starting to specialize in what I did at the time. Would really identify at that time with working with people with personality disorders. And all through that journey, my sort of relationship with Christ or God or Jesus or Yeshua certainly changed. Became more of rather than a book knowledge, more of a personal knowledge, and trying to really incorporate the things I had told as opposed to the things that I sort of felt and seen. And that was a huge shift for me, because sometimes if you're not following what people can feel comfortable with, as opposed to sort of how you're feeling, it causes a lot of controversy, or it can cause a lot of challenges for them. And and then my journey changed from that into working in ceremony and working with different plant medicines, and that really opened me up to having quite a wonderful but very, at the time, unknowing, humbling, terrifying experience with what I would say is the Spirit of Christ. And, trying to figure out what it means when you need to speak more about me, not about the person in the book, but the person you know.
Yeah, the thing that comes to mind for me initially here is differentiating what we've been taught, what other people have taught us, what scripture is telling us, how we're interpreting that scripture, how we're taught to interpret that scripture, from the actual words and the actual intention of Christ as he walked on this earth as the Son of God. That feels very, very important and not to be taken lightly.
Yeah.
Like if there's anything that should be taken really, really seriously, it's that. And yet I've never heard, other than these initial conversations with you, and now I'm hearing little whispers of it online as I delve a little bit further into Instagram and stuff, and seeing other people kind of whispering about it. Like, not, some people are talking about it directly, but there's still, well, I mean, maybe it's just my experience of not having delved into it too far at this point, and I don't know how far I want to delve into it in terms of the discourse and the arguments of this or that or the other thing, but, differentiating basically between doing what we're told and learning from human beings, their interpretation, without that person telling us, this is my interpretation, and it's up to you to find your own interpretation and your own connection with the Spirit, not with what I'm telling you and me as your leader, which is so fundamentally obvious. And I feel like I'm getting passionate about this right now because it does play into my life and how I've been duped, in a way, but not by anybody, just by a culture that doesn't seem to be interested in the soul, like the voice of the individual, the sole purpose of every individual, hearing the truth of an individual, like wanting to know what their purpose is, as opposed to it being a multiple choice, and for me with my father, it wasn't even a multiple choice really. I mean, it was, but in terms of the trajectory, and I understood his pragmatic sensibility is, he wanted me to be able, among other, to make a bunch of money and be able to afford a Learjet and all this stuff that he wasn't able to do out of some boyhood fantasy that he had. That's part of it. But another part, he wanted me to be able to be a provider for my family, which makes a lot of sense. And I deviated from that for a long time. But anyways, so not getting too far off track here, there is, there's an energy here for me. And so what are you working with at this moment, at this time, in terms of what's coming up for you in terms of differentiating that past, that, the fact from fiction, the fact being, the deeper truth in your heart and your own connection with God, with Christ? What's happening for you?
What I'm trying to work with is not fixing, accepting, and not, because I noticed there would be a tendency to be like, well, God said this, and it was more of this human connection, this what's actually in front of me, and this sort of the humbleness of that. And as I shared with you before, when off camera, when we were talking, I just being very humble, but spending a lot of solitude and a lot of time in prayer. And my first idea of prayer was being very, what I was taught, being very graceful. But now it's asking a lot of questions and actually listening for some sort of answer. And it's incredibly challenging. Sometimes as a human, you don't know the questions to ask. And sometimes you have to sit in that. So I'm spending a lot of time working with that, and just a lot of direct prayer, a lot of time being by myself, very just sitting in that, which is not the easiest thing to do in this time and place in the world where everything is so connected and the expectations are extremely high, and to make connections and really not even trying to, it's almost like it's overwhelming to be connected to Christ, to that Spirit of Christ, and really taking a deep dive into myself, and then how the things that come forward now that are presented to me, it just doesn't make any sense. I can't explain it. I'm trying to be more open to that process rather than explaining it away, and just sort of being sitting in that and being like, it's going to be what it's going to be, and there's a reason this is happening, and I don't have all the answers.
Sounds like what I'm hearing is that there's just a lot of growth in terms of acceptance and humility.
Yeah, I mean, I think it even acceptance is not approval, right?
Oh yeah, tell me more about that.
Well, I think it's a quote. Don't quote me on that. I think when I was doing a lot of dialectical behavior therapy, there's a very much a Zen Buddhism flavor to some of the skills, but it's very challenging to be accepting of what's actually happening in that current moment. Doesn't mean we approve of it, but that's what's actually happening in this very moment.
Right. And our approval is an illusion. Yeah. So is another person's approval. So a father's approval or an institution's approval, but our own approval of what's happening, that seems really fundamental, because if you're working with people that are in crisis, which you often do, and if there's one person who's not approving of the other person, that's probably an important perspective to point out and to dig into, in terms of where does approval lie, where does acceptance lie, and where does an understanding that when we don't approve, what we're really staring at is an inconvenience of reality. However, we don't want to necessarily bend the knee or bend over, in the proverbial either way, to somebody else's will or intention to dominate, if that's happening consciously or unconscious. And that's another tricky thing to navigate. So I don't envy your job because, discerning, teasing apart those knots and finding acceptance for what is without, which I guess, comes back to having a guru, having a role model, having somebody to look up to, and listening, being able to go back and reread the words of Christ and feel, pray to that Spirit pray for that connection, pray for,
Yeah.
and I've done that before many times, and I've often been so surprised at the direction, and it's like humbling. It's humbling. And I love
Yeah.
relinquishing control to that spirit and to other spirits, other higher levels of consciousness, of awareness that I'm able to relinquish and just follow, just be of service to their guidance. That is such a blessing. Oh my goodness, such a blessing. It's like a game changer,
Yeah.
where then the confusion it's not about confusion or about approval. It's not about any of that. It's just about showing up and being of service to my heart and just making sure I stay connected to that and hearing the voice and going back to prayer.
Yeah. It's always, I think when you're talking about that, the thing that comes up for me really is, trusting that, the transparency of that, that when you can just give that over, be accepting, and you're not looking, there's no approval needed. I think it's a pretty big shift for a lot of us. I'll speak for myself. It's a big shift for me when you just go, okay, that's what's happening, and being okay with it. Like, it's whatever possibly is going to work out is the best possible thing to work out.
Mm-hmm.
That's what was going to happen. What I find
But how
interesting is,
yeah, go ahead, finish.
it's
Yeah, go ahead.
it's interesting because you can get caught up in that, and like, I don't like what's happening, and I feel terrible what's happening, and sitting in that, it's like, but that's what is happening. And yeah.
And the question I want to ask, how do you discern when Luke intervenes with what's happening as a voice in that reality? I mean, there's obviously certain things if you're in the middle of a storm and expect to have an impact, right? You're going to become like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. Now we're going to get to go full circle, and the eye of the storm. We don't want to be Dorothy, although Dorothy gets taken to Oz, and so it ends up being okay. But how do you know?
I think what I'm starting to realize is that, well, I mean, I've gone against it so much in my life, not accepting what's happening, and being okay with, and that's a weird language, okay, being accepting of what's happening and not trying to fight it. But there's lots of times in my life, Mark, that I fought it, thought I was doing what was best, and it didn't work out. And I guess what was supposed to happen happened, but it didn't work out in the sense there wasn't same. I didn't feel the same way about it. There wasn't. It's kind of like when people say, like, the only way through something is through it. And I know myself and other people I've worked with, sitting in pain is very, very uncomfortable. And to say, well, that's what's supposed to happen, and we need to sit through these things. They don't like it. We don't like it.
And there are a lot of people out there who believe that they don't deserve that pain, and they choose to numb it.
Yeah. And so my experience has been, and that doesn't mean that's everyone's experience, is that when people, and myself, I'll just speak of myself, when I do sit in that pain, and it sucks, and it hurts, and it's like crawling through glass, and it just doesn't seem like it's ever going to end, and you keep sitting in it and working through that, tends to stop and end sooner. You're kind of sitting back and going, oh, wow. But there's things in my life, even to this day, I've fought the pain of going through it, and they're still there. It's a big question, and I don't know what the answer would be, but that would be the best one I could give you today.
Yeah. I mean, we're using the word fighting against, like, I feel like it's like going upstream as opposed to going with the flow. But then that question still continues to come up for me is, at what point are we being passive to our own destiny, to our own current? But I guess that's called cultivating a knowing too, and being able, using principles of the teachings of Christ to be able to help us come back to a place that's centered. And there are other great teachers in that regard too. Buddha, in ceremony, Ganesh continues to come up, and I go back and I look up Ganesh and continue to read more about him, because he continues to come up as a guide, kind of nudging me in this direction or that direction. So there are these, and I would call them secondary guides, because, like, we talked about, the vision that I had was, for all intents and purposes, was when Christ walks in the room, everybody bows.
Right.
And for me, fundamentally, that makes so much sense. Not being Christian ever in my life, being able to just look at that objectively and to see that if you take away Christianity and the religious doctrine and the us versus them, or at least like the tribalism associated with religion, and you just look at the teachings of Christ, like with if you're a Jew in Israel, and if you're a Muslim in Palestine, and if you were to feel the indoctrination, or like, let's say the Air Force One, the shadow of Air Force One coming over the horizon, which is wearing that Christian, even Donald Trump identifies as Christian. And so it is this like religious war. Like it goes back to the Crusades, it goes back further, and it's tied into colonization. But if you start to deconstruct all of those, phenomenon and all those thoughts, those constructs, and the written texts of these different prophets, and we pair back what each of these individuals stood for, Muhammad and Buddha, they were obviously very evolved human beings, but Christ still rises above in terms, and I believe I don't know. I mean, he's the Son of God. It's just so clear when I have that feeling that I get when I tap into that soul, and it's not connected to indoctrination. And I don't know that everybody will believe me. It's not connected to a mythology, that connects to hierarchy, where I'm just quietly or unconsciously taking sides with the Christian crusade, and that I'm actually a part of a movement that's against the Muslim fundamentally, and against Judaism, even though the Judeo-Christian collaboration has its own kind of, power structure and an alliance, in a broader war that some people have identified really succinctly. I know very little about, but when I hear, when that's deconstructed, it does feel like there's a lot of truth to that. But those are tribes, those are large tribes living on Earth, and there's a lot of fear and anxiety, and associating with a group is very fundamentally a part of the human condition. So anyways, to get beyond that into seeing the Spirit of Christ, and if it's, returning, is he returning as a human being? Is he returning just in a more significant way, energetically, to be able to, first of all, allow Christianity to fall at the wayside. And so then, the Jewish man or the Jewish woman stands up, feels like, oh, that feels different, and then the Muslim man or the Muslim woman also takes notice, like there's an identification of Christ being a prophet. But with Christianity out of the way, do I need the mythology of what it means to be Muslim? Do I need the mythology of what it means to be Jewish? And it's difficult to really go any further than that, because the stories, the what ifs, can only go so far. And I'm trying to get at something that is still a little bit out of reach for myself in terms of, what that path looks like for mankind. And it feels so definitively, there's a word here, so definitively correct and aligned, but also risky of being misinterpreted every single step of the way with the mythology of Christianity and how it comes part and parcel with the Spirit of Christ. There's copyright of the Spirit of Christ, and that copyright is going to be shown for what it is. And it doesn't mean you have to give up the Bible. It doesn't mean you have to not go to church. It means that the awareness of having a spirit that's willing to show itself to you without the Bible, without the church, without the indoctrination that comes with it, and without the history of massacre that comes with it in terms of the power structures that come with it. So there's another little rant. This is a Pandora's box for me. Like this, I'm opening up something that I'm able to talk about publicly, and it feels so right to be doing that. And it's just scratching the surface. Like my knowledge of it, my relationship with Christ is just scratching the surface. It's new, but it's deep already. It's so deep. It is so aligned. And I'm of service to no higher spirit, to no higher state of consciousness, the Son of God.
I mean, even like, those things come up in these like symbolisms, and I know people have asked me, and I shared this with you, and they're like, well, who's your guru? And I said, well, Jesus. And they're like, he wasn't a guru. You're trying to, you realize you're trying to break down centuries and centuries of ideation and what it means to have a relationship with Christ, God. And, people ask questions, and I I don't know how to answer their questions other than, the one thing I do remember was, you follow these 2 commandments, you're going to do okay. And that's my language. Didn't actually say it that way, but that's how I interpret it. Love God and love yourself as you love your neighbor, love your neighbor. I think that got lost along the way a long time ago.
Nothing
Yeah.
could be more obvious. And yet to even hear you say that feels controversial. But it's like Christianity, even, God rest his soul. No, what is it?
God rest his soul. Yeah, like when people pass away. And
God rest his soul. Yeah. So the fellow Charlie Kirk, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but, he had a lot of very, very positive things to say about masculinity and the like. And he spoke a lot about Christ and the teachings of Christ, but it was through the Christian lens. It was through the ownership, the copyright, the lens of Christ being copyrighted by Christians, by those who carry the Bible and the institutions that use the Bible to create cohesion. It's not just power. It's not just insidious, but there's also these institutional power structures that human beings gravitate to in order to feel safe. And I'll tell you definitively, when you gravitate to something to feel safe that's not God, you are limiting your ability to ascend spiritually and consciously, because it does put blinders up. There is an exchange. I'll give you safety. You're going to be a little bit dimmer than you possibly could be on this path.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe that's a little bit too intense and harsh, because it is also, there's nothing wrong with living a simple life and just focusing on family, focusing on community. But it just has to be said that if you give your power over to an institution, not to God, and I'm not talking about giving your power over to the Spirit of Christ, I'm talking about giving it over to an institution, in order to feel safer in your nervous system, you will not be pushed to surrender deeply as those who don't. Which is fair enough. That's a choice that's like totally a noble choice to make that exchange. But it's also gotten us into a situation where we're dealing with the copyright, the copyright of spirits of the Son of God, for crying out loud. And it's just like, it's kind of like enough is enough.
Yeah. Well, and I think what's maybe happening now, what I see happening now, is a lot of the teachings of Christ that are starting to, I think they're pouring out into the world. But I'm own my bias towards that for sure. But it's what I'm seeing is, and then you and I had talked about this. I think I often felt that a lot of things were cherry picked from the messages and from, Christianity as a doctrine, and kind of sometimes made things easy. It's not easy to turn the other cheek. It's not easy to keep forgiving people. And I think we missed out on that, to really do that. And not only forgive others, but also forgiving ourselves. And I think those things are really hard to do. And my experience to date.
And you have to sit in the pain to do that.
That's right. We're not comfortable doing that. And so, sitting down with people who maybe are not able to have that conversation, but that's a judgment in itself, right? You have to actually sit with them. You actually have to sit with people in their pain, in their hardness, in their situations in life, and experience them. And that's one of the things in my understanding and my understanding of teachings of Christ. They did a lot of that. He did a lot of that, just sitting with people. Yeah. Where they're at, not, hey, you're a totally horrible person and you shouldn't be doing this. And if you just do exactly what I say, you're going to have everlasting life. I've never read that. I'm not saying that it's not there. I just never read that. But I know I've read him sitting with people in tremendous pain and not flinching from that. And that to me is very challenging.
There's a teaching that Christ sat down with some indigenous people, and he prayed with the people, not for the people. I've shared this with you. Yeah. And that teaching, that sticks out to me more than any other at this moment, as we sit in circle with other people. But if you really distill that to Christ, the Son of God, prayed with the people, not for the people.
Yeah.
That is so poignant. It just takes the power out of any illusion that any human being may carry that they are superior to somebody else, whether it's
Right.
spiritually, hierarchically, or hierarchically in terms of wealth or power or influence
Right.
in the eyes of God. I mean, Christ is obviously, somebody that can help people. He can heal people. There are healers around the world. There are gurus around the world that you can go to. But if they sit there and if they pray for the people, not with the people, they're missing a piece.
Yeah.
Their ego construct is telling them something that's not true. They're in the human flesh, the fallibility of the human experience that we're all connected to. We're all woven together, our human shells of these mortal shells that we witness, and we watch the degradation of these shells. But they have these nervous systems, these pain bodies that we're learning to take care of together. Anyways, that's just such a powerful teaching.
It's very humbling. It's such a powerful teaching. Like to think
Yeah.
that prayed with the people, not for the people. We prayed with them.
Yeah.
Wow.
Exactly.
Right.
Totally.
Yeah.
He was so attuned to his humility as a human on this planet. So there's two phenomenon here. There's, like, for me, considering Christ as a human being,
Mm-hmm.
as he walked just like I did, as he experienced adversity just like I did, as he fought to become more attuned to his heart just like I am. But he was able to go for 40 days.
Mm-hmm.
And the crucifixion, it's all bewildering in terms of what he was able to endure,
Mm-hmm.
all as an ascension to God, being witnessed by others, so
Mm-hmm.
they don't have to do that. They can rest with him as a symbol of the light of God through a human soul, through that sacrifice.
Yeah.
It's a profound story, and I don't pretend to know. Really, the Christian symbolism still evades me a little bit. I still can't quite. Or at least, let's say, the symbolism that I've heard through popular culture and also through biblical representations, by whether it's sermons or whatever, things that I've caught wind of, mostly pop culture and movies, to be honest. But where, there's certain, I can't even recite them right now, but there's certain, like Jesus is Lord. I cannot quite connect to that because he's sitting here with the people, not for the people. He's not God. He is the Son of God. And he's here performing a service, and he connects to the light of God like no other human has, perhaps no other being has. And maybe that goes without saying, no other being has, but it still doesn't change the fact, that he's of service to creation and all of its manifestations. Like we're talking tidal waves, tsunamis, tornadoes, smallpox, all these manifestations of existence of God. He's at the mercy of those also. So he's not God. Just as that doesn't make sense to me. What do you think? What do you make of all of the Christian sort of orientation of Christ in that way?
Well, I wouldn't pretend to be a theologian, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to Christian doctrine, I think between what I was taught, like God was all three, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, that's a hard concept to grasp when we know what was written about him in the garden before he was waiting for them to come and get him to go to the crucifixion and the torture he went through. They say he prayed and, God, take this cup from me. Not my will be done, but your will be done. And to me, that shows his humility. Like, I don't want to do this. Like, is there any way to not have to do this? But he did it anyways.
Mm-hmm. Because he knew that's what he was being asked.
That's what he was being asked to do. And so to me, it's God's will, right? And people may think that's a crazy way to look at it, and when I say it, it's
well, wait a second.
Kind of like,
wait a second. Why would that? So is that not what Christians would believe, or certain denominations of Christianity? Is that not the story?
That he would be humbled like that and show his humanness? No.
Yeah.
It's like there's to actually show that, and to me, it's like he knew what was going to happen. Like that. Like, think about that. Like, this is going to happen. This is happening.
Yeah.
I could run away. I could do this.
Yeah.
I could take
He's
off.
still a human being.
I can perform miracles. And I think
he's still a human being on this planet. So people, does it not serve the institution of Christianity in, let's say, certain denominations at certain time, or maybe all across the board, to acknowledge that he had human fears and concerns and had to fight to stay in his heart and to follow the will of God, which was outside of him and with him, in him, both at the same time.
I think
as opposed to him just being God, the manifestation of God.
I think aspects of it would be, I mean, I can't speak for all Christians. And I don't even call myself a Christian. I just call myself a follower of the way of Jesus or Yeshua or Christ. That's what fits for me. But I think there is some subsectors of that would be very much, well, he's the Son of Man and like Son of God. And, he knew what was going to happen, and he knew he was going to raise on the third day, and he was going to do this, and it's all good, right? But to actually do that, like
as a human being,
to actually go, this is coming, and to be
feeling fight or flight,
and to not
having stories trying to come in to take over, like the rest of us. He fought through that, and he surrendered to God over and over again, and he did the fasting, which is obviously, to me, fundamental to be able to let go of that human anchor to a degree that was significant enough for his, for the light of God to come through him and for his spirit to manifest in how it was meant to, for the greater good. Because it was certainly, I would say, God's plan, as it played out. And, there's an impossible to understand conversation between the Spirit of Christ and God before Christ manifested as a human being. But when we were manifest as a human being, like he was in a similar position where you're a child, you're a baby, you're orientating, you're like exploring this quantum soup for the first time. You're not looking through it through the wisdom of God, as an infant. Like all of this stuff takes time, but his spirit, was so powerful. That's how I view it right from the get-go. Just the most powerful spirit that's ever inhabited a human form. And so it was going to come out. It was going to rise into, what we view and what the story, as God would have foreseen that there would have been spiritual prophets that would have seen this, but not him, not in every second of every day. There would have been glimpses and moments, but I'm sure, I don't know that for sure, but I'm sure that it was, he did it as a human being. And it's like, now that's something to really, to be humbled by, to look up to, all of the things. It's very, very powerful. Becomes a very, very powerful story to be able to, and there have been filmmakers and depictions of his, I'm pretty sure Martin Scorsese's depiction of Christ. I haven't seen it in a long time, and I'd like to watch it again. But it gave a human flavor, a human texture to it, a human struggle. I think that maybe even he was criticized for that at the time. But I'm curious about these different points of view, but also I'm not at the same time. It's more about just, cultivating that connection, that unique connection for me as a human, so I can use that as a stepping stone, graciously, that grace and that direction to get through the pain that I experience as I ascend on this path, spiritually speaking.
I think sometimes too, it really shows that, Christ's experience on earth as a human was not easy, and that he lived in a time when, you imagine being like speaking against all the Pharisees and all these people, and you can be stoned and die at any moment, yet you still continue to do it. So to me, he's a bit of a rebel, right? Like, I think he's pretty badass, but I mean, I know some people don't like it when I say it like that, but to me, he was a real badass. Like he made shit happen. He wasn't letting it go.
But all through his heart. And perhaps there was shadow that came through at certain times, and he had to fight through that adversity of ego and shadow, like the rest of us work with. I'm sure that there would have been moments of that, rising above that. But the big moments were, that's the light of God coming through him and confronting the dissonance that became too overwhelming and too influential for the greater good. I mean, if we're praying for the greater good, are we held in love? Are we all held in love? Is there, almost like a thrust that comes through the earth and through the universe to move us towards balance and the greater good, but through this phenomenon of balance. Yeah, I don't know. It's above my pay grade to see like how did
Yeah,
things get
mine
so
too.
bad? Yeah,
Hmm.
but it's like, we stopped living tribally, and obviously there were issues with living tribally. It was difficult to, there would have been a lot of us versus them and territorial instincts dominating actions as opposed to, coming through the heart, but there are also a lot of tribes that lived very much in their heart and were brought back to their heart through ceremony. So it's a bit of a, it's a bit of a web, but in comes Christ after colonialism takes over, and the dogma of the Old Testament. Even was it the Old Testament that was the primary doctrine at that point in Jerusalem, where Christ would have lived? Do you know?
Yeah,
Prior
it would
to,
be that, you know, that with the old scriptures, right? As they would
yeah,
call them, like
through
the
Moses,
writings, the
right?
Torah, and he challenged some of those things.
Yeah, because there's some they weren't working anymore. At least the way that they were taught, or
Yeah,
the way that they were perhaps
yeah,
even rewritten to serve. But this is all
yeah,
speculation on my part. But the dissonance of human behavior and greed and fear, ultimately fear. Greed is a manifestation of fear all day long. And so it's just, he was there to help people wake up and begin to ascend and to not get caught in the construct that whatever was there for them and they were told that this is what your options are in terms of faith and healing and being a part of you're either a part of us and you either do it our way and that's how you get to God, or you're dead. We'll cut you loose and send you to the lions, kind of thing.
yeah. There's not a lot of, how my understanding, it doesn't make it right. Well, not a lot of love in some of that stuff. Because I often think of that, like,
That's institution.
Christ said, yeah, Christ said, they'll know you're my followers by the love you have. And I think that's been lost. And I struggle
Mm,
with that too. I'm not always the most
uh-huh,
loving person. I screw up, I make mistakes,
uh-huh.
and you have to work that through.
You do. And if you're, if you're young, you're cheating on your partner, you're drinking too much, like you're doing things that when you look in the mirror, you're kind of having to look away. Like if that's where you are in your life and something speaks to you about, a teaching, a spiritual teaching, whether it's like in Buddhism or Hinduism, or if it's the teaching of Christ, if something speaks to you there and you feel that love in your heart and that phrase that you just spoke about, what is it again? Could you repeat that? You'll know my followers from.
You'll know my followers by the way they love, because of the love you bring, right? Like, 'cause,
Yeah. And yet that person's not there yet, but they want to be, and
yeah,
they can be a follower even before they get there.
yeah,
Kind of, because it's like there's compassion and an understanding. Like there's something about that quote that's sort of like, is that shaming of the person who's not there yet, but sees the light ahead, or has that intention to do their best to get on their path and unconsciously falls off. That light of God is always there no matter where they are. So I guess
yeah,
it depends on interpretation.
yeah,
And it also, you need something to aspire to. You need something to
right?
aspire to. Like, I want to be a follower of Christ, let's say. Um, and I want to be in my heart. I want to be in that place of love all day long. And I'm working on it, and that's good enough. So there has to be that teaching also,
Yeah,
but it's not good enough to say that it's good enough and then to actually not be following that.
yeah,
Because the mind can get in the way and you can make excuses for having done it well enough. So I guess, for him to go any further into that and give compassion for the people who are far behind, it's like, you don't want to say too much to those people and give them too much grace, because if they feel, will they sit in their pain? Will they sit with their discomfort, with their experience of reality? Or will they continue to go back and project it onto other people and think of themselves as a victim and all those things that come with, wanting to feel safe with our stories? It's so complicated, Luke. How do we get out of it?
I think we
I
go
mean,
into it. I think we just keep going
yeah,
into it. I don't know if we'll ever. I don't know if we're getting out, but getting in. Maybe that's where the meat and potatoes, as they'd say, is. I don't know if we
yeah.
ever get out of it. Certainly has been my experience, but if you know of a way, let me know.
So, yeah, and you're just talking about the human experience, right?
Right. which to me
Yeah,
is
things all,
fundamentally connected to the Spirit of Christ.
yes. I got sloppy this last week with in my relationship, and I allowed myself just to get color outside of the lines a little bit. You know, she was sick. We were having a hard time.
Mhm.
And I gave myself permission to say things that weren't perfectly truthful in my heart and in alignment. I allowed myself to reveal parts of my shadow that I otherwise am quite good at containing. But when I'm containing them, there's also an element of control that comes with that. So it's a bit of a paradox
Mhm.
because I'm in my heart, but I'm watching my tendencies, I'm watching the stories, and I'm not falling for it. But in doing that, I'm not fully being honest. So I allowed her to see the child aspect of myself untethered. And it has
Yeah.
done something. It has opened something up with her ability to see me and to have compassion for me more deeply than she's ever been able to before. I never would have expected that, to get a little bit sloppy, that could be a gift. And I think I was surrendering to what's real on a deeper level. And it's just little sideways comments and like fears that I have that are coming up. Well, you said this and you said that too. You know, just allowing myself to get a little gossipy, a little bit sloppy with my words. And I did not expect it to be as liberating as it was. And now I feel like I've let go, like that shadow, that by controlling it, by not letting it out, by just saying, you know, like, I don't believe you, I don't believe you. It's not true. Coming back here. Some of it was like, okay, you know, we tried, we're out of here. Some of it was, but some of it was like, nah, we're going to stick around because we're still resonating with your human experience. So we're going to stick around. And somehow just expressing it and being in it has let go of a lot of it. Like I can be in my heart without having to control. It's just not there. And maybe it'll come back, and I'm sure some of it will and some of it won't. But it was a big step. It was a very unexpected step.
Going with it, being
Mhm.
with the mess, eh? And just accepting that we can be a mess and we are messy. We're
Mhm.
people, we're humans. To me, that seems more real than I got it all under control and I know what
Totally.
I'm doing. It doesn't work for me. I think if you ever hear me saying that, Mark, you tell me I'm full of shit because eventually we're going to get sloppy.
Because we're not Christ.
That's right.
That's
We're
part of
not
the teaching, is that we don't have to be.
No, yeah.
And he's
I
praying
mean,
for us.
yeah, and it's okay to be sloppy.
Yeah. And somehow it can be loving for ourselves to let that part of us be seen, be witnessed, just to be exposed. There's something that's just like I can rest better at night having allowed my partner to see that.
Yeah.
I would not have expected that.
Yeah.
Well, any closing words here, my friend?
I think I'm all spoken out, but I appreciate you allowing me to come on here and talk about my experiences and some of my things I'm working on. And it's interesting as things progress in my life and then this becomes a bigger and bigger, more part of my life. So I appreciate you letting me express that.
You're very welcome. And thank you for being a part of this conversation and part of this sort of discourse and expression. I'm getting a lot out of it. I do want to delve into the gospel of Paul and Thomas and
Oh yeah,
all of these
all
other,
that fun stuff.
you
Yeah,
know, yeah, getting into the kind of the meat of the Bible, just discerning, and maybe we can bring somebody else on sometime too to delve into that
yeah,
a little bit more. And it's, you know, it's obviously a fountain of insight in the Bible. That's not just the words of Christ, things to ponder, things to share and to get interpretation of. Like I went to a local church here. It was a Mennonite church, just visiting a friend he's my Bobcat mechanic. And he invited me to go. And I actually asked him about it. He said, you're more than welcome to come. Everybody's welcome. And it was really beautiful. The men and the women went in different directions, and we went to a Bible study where we just talked about one passage in the Bible, and then we were all relating to it. We're all this happened to me, and that connects to that. And then the elders of the room were eldering. I've never seen white people gathering in circle where there's elders eldering younger men in circle before, and that was happening behind closed doors in this Mennonite community. So, I mean, certainly some people have had traumatic experiences in those, in certain Mennonite communities.
Sure.
And there's cleaning up that has to happen in all of these communities. However, this is the healthiest experience that I've had outside of men's circle. I didn't know it existed. It
Yeah.
was really beautiful to be a part of. Yeah. And I appreciated the indigenous wisdom of the men going one direction and the women going the other. And there is wisdom there. We can get into that on another podcast too. Like, we have to be careful. We have to be careful of like us versus them, or, of whoever the leader is, if they're a man or a woman. We have to be careful in all cases. We have to be discerning. But something really healthy about men being able to gather with men, and then women gathering with women, and then returning to a larger circle of men and women.
It's pretty beautiful.
Yeah. Good things are happening. Things are
Yep.
definitely happening.
We
Yeah.
just get out of the way sometimes, eh?
Yeah. That's a big part of it. Yeah. Learning how to go with the flow without being passive. I think is, being centered, being in our heart. One of the teachings that comes up, often is taking a stand, not a side.
Mhm.
So when we're making a choice and we're seeing ourselves take a side, don't do that.
Don't do that, right?
Don't do that. It's like, take a stand. What's in your heart? What's authentic to you? What do you feel? These teachings are going to become more and more pronounced, as time goes on here. So, these spirits come in, and the changes that are coming, that I've seen in visions, and I can't say for sure, but that's what I'm seeing, and that's not going away. So
No, they just keep
it's good.
coming.
Yeah, totally. It's a good time to be alive, but fasten your seatbelts.
Hang on. It's going to be a ride.
Yeah, and it already is, obviously.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Luke Burton. How can people reach you if they want to reach out to you as a therapist or counselor? We'll put your email in the notes here, but share it now too.
You can get a hold of me through email at a couple different ways, burtonpowered@gmail.com, and then Lucas at okclinical.com. And those are the easiest ways to get a hold of me.
Yeah, Luke is a very sensitive man, and we've been doing ceremony together, and he's on a good path, and he's a very, very good therapist. I can vouch for him.
Thank you.
Yeah, very attuned to the people in front of him. Yeah, it's beautiful. Okay.
All right.
Well, yeah, thank you, Luke. I'll just sign off here without further ado. Sacred Village Podcast. This is Mark A. Lewis. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you have any questions or comments or suggestions for guests, send us an email. You can find out all that information and information about Lucas at sacredvillagepodcast.com. Over and out.
I lay my head down.
Check out my lovely partner's music, Kristina Jessen, at KristinaJessen.com. And there's also more information on what we're doing. We're doing a land project up here, traditional land development with a community intention. And if you're interested in any of the retreats that we're a part of and part of organizing, you can find all that information at sacredvillagepodcast.com. Have a wonderful day.